Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap on the Boom Bust channel, Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host Terry, and today we are recapping episode 1 of Hard Knocks. Man, a lot of feelings with this. Obviously, if you didn't watch it, you might want to check it out first. You know, this ain't a movie or nothing, so we're gonna talk about spoilers. But yeah, a lot of feelings going into this. I was not really a fan. It's kind of weird. So, well, I wouldn't say it's weird. This is the way I break it down. For a lot of people, they'll talk about the distraction and all that. And yes, part of that's true. I'm not going to act like it's non-existent, but that's not my big fear. I mean, you're in the NFL. That's just the way it goes. It's 2024. You're exposed all the time. So I wasn't too worried about that aspect of it. But I know a lot of people were. For me, the part I didn't like is the exposure, because I don't like having to deal with all the crazy discussions about the Bears online, because I mean, yeah, I could ignore it. I don't have to deal with it, but I don't. I especially once it becomes spread out everywhere I go, I'm like, eventually I'm gonna see something and I gotta respond, because come on, people not gonna talk about the Bears. I respond for less. I'm definitely gonna respond about the Bears. So I'm like, it'd be nice if we could go under the radar, but we haven't. The off season is the off season, so everybody wants to talk about Caleb. The NFL does what they do. They put us as the Hall of Fame game to give people a reason to talk about Caleb. Obviously, we're in Hard Knocks, so they're talking about Caleb. And it's just so much talk about him. So they're constantly talking about the Bears. And I put it in the community today. Nick Wright, one of the unfortunate, I don't dislike him, but one of the unfortunate parts of Caleb is Nick Wright. He's a big fan. So he's picking us to go to Super Bowl. So it's just so much. And as I said before, if you're first time listening, I'll repeat. So much of the discourse, especially now, is not about the team, the players individually or the coaches. It's more so about the fans than anything. And so when people get obnoxious, whether it's the media or casual fans, whoever, people want to rally against that team. So it's so much talk about us that it's just painting the bullseye on our back. And I used to be a little, not little, I would say I was pretty naive not too long ago about how players were. It's a different time. The generations have changed. These players today, they do care. They care about Madden ratings. They care about what people are tweeting. They care about what's viral. They care about what people are saying about them. And it's very different than it used to be, so it took me some time to realize that, but they care. So whether it's our team or an opponent, we got a bullseye on our back. And so I was not happy for Hard Knocks. I was not happy at all. But to grade this episode as a Bears fan, and then I'm gonna grade it independently because I watch Hard Knocks all the time. I love Hard Knocks. And selfishly, as you know, somebody that's around football a lot, I do enjoy getting to see the behind the scenes of our team, and I get to compare it to a lot of teams, and we'll talk about that later. But as a Bears fan, as far as positive, negative for us in terms of this season, not how it made us look, but in terms of the season, I would give it a B. I give it a B. And that's no joke. B for Bears, I know. But I give it a B because it's one of those situations where anyone that is competent and really good at their job, like Hard Knocks is, they're not going to ignore all the talk. They're going to talk about Eberflus and his beard. They're going to talk about Caleb Williams and all that. They're going to talk about all the discussion points. They're going to talk about Simone Biles. So I'm not going to fault them. They have to talk about those things. They didn't slander anybody in any crazy way. They never really do. But still, I think there's definitely, and I love, if you didn't, again, if you knew or if you don't follow me, I loved the off season. I think that, I don't think everybody loved it, but a lot of people realized how insane it was. And so it was a lot of talk about it. So the off season with the Giants was crazy. So coming off of that, I'm like, yeah, I know how people can watch the exact same thing and have completely wildly different takes. That's just gonna happen. So I'm watching this stuff and I'm like, to me, I feel like this, but potentially people out there might look at this in a negative way. So there's going to be talk, and I'm gonna check Twitter after this. But even with that, I think they played it down the middle. And they gave us some good access. They gave us a good narrative. It's a pretty objective narrative. It painted the correct picture of everything. And so I give it a solid B for episode 1. As objective, just as a series, I'll probably give it a B+. I thought they did a lot of things that were fun, and they really understood the assignment. And again, Hard Knocks always does. Rarely would I ever watch Hard Knocks and think it's below a B-. So I think they always understand. The Giants, well, it's hard because I've seen the whole Giants series, so I'm just talking about one episode. I can't compare apples to apples, but I probably should. I'm gonna just say B+ for episode 1 for what they gave us. As a Hard Knocks series, it was pretty good. So then I'm gonna go to my notes. And we'll go through it. So the Jordan intro with Caleb, and again, I talked about Hard Knocks. They can't shy away from this stuff, but F them, man. Absolutely F Hard Knocks for doing the Jordan intro, because we obviously it just hits different when it's us. Like, again, you see other series, Hard Knocks, they're topical, they know what's going on, they're gonna talk about it, and it's fine. But when it comes to Chicago, A is personal, but B it's Michael Jordan. We know what that means, and we got The Last Dance, and we got all that. So obviously they're trying to show that Caleb Williams has a lot of hype, but to go with the Jordan, man, that's about to be clipped everywhere. And so I don't want to say I feel bad. At the end of the day, it's not even a 1% impact. But there's definitely some people that's gonna run with that. They did not need to give that fuel to the people. All right, Eberflus. A couple things. Let me combine my notes. Number 1, Eberflus be getting crispy out here. Okay, like, I knew he showed up with the beard, and I kind of noticed his look was different, but I didn't really care. Like, honestly, that's not like the big thing. But I like that they focused in on it. Again, they're topical. They know what the internet's talking about. So they talk about his wife and everything, but there's a team barber, and the barber gets him crispy. Look, at the end of the day, you gotta, as a better Bears fan, you gotta compartmentalize these things. You gotta look at this and say what's important, what's not. Again, I talk about the impact. This is a less than 1% impact, but I can't ignore that those are cool points, because that's what Hard Knocks does. Hard Knocks shows you behind the scenes. That's the point of it. We don't get to be there. Even if you were there for training camp, that's a small amount of people. So we get the behind the scenes. His wife, whatever, she got him done up, same old typical story. But the fact is, he out here getting crispy. He getting the beard nice. He getting it all, you faded out. Hey, that's gonna get you cool points. Let's go with it. So I like that. Eberflus is all over this offense, and this reminded me. I'm not gonna say I'm right about anything or nothing like that, but I'm gonna say it reminded me of something that I always say, that I believe, some people don't agree, that the good coaches can coach. Like, I have said many times, I hate this this label of defensive minded coach, offensive minded coach. It's so dumb. I was thinking about this the other day when I was at the gym. I was listening to, I forgot exactly what I was listening to. But I was thinking, going through my thoughts, and I'm like, it's what I've always said for the greatest coaches that I've been around. And I haven't been around the GOATs, but I've been around a lot of big name coaches, especially at the time. And they all know how to take information from the entire game. And people believe like it's Madden or something else, like, no, offensive minded coach, that's all he does. No, the best coaches take information from everything. And so when they talk about whoever it might be, especially today, I'm like, you don't think that coach knows something about offense? They're like, well, he's a defensive minded head coach, so how can that impact the quarterback's development? Or that's going to mean that they put it into a simplistic box, and that's not how it is. Some coaches are old school, they stick to their thing. Some people, even if they're offense or defense, they're not versatile in the schemes. Some people are versatile all over. But at the end of the day, if you don't know offense, how can you be good at defense? And the same is true vice versa. So Eberflus has said this, and this was a theme that I picked up throughout. The Bears are as advertised. And I could really say that too, because I seen them up close and personal off TV. Not just at a game. Obviously, I was at the joint practices last year with the Colts. The Bears are as advertised. Eberflus said that he spends time with both, and that he's not really trying to be the D coordinator. He's trying to be more of a CEO type, which would make sense because, as we saw, Nick Saban was one of his coaches, and probably he's a big disciple, and we'll get into that later. So that makes sense. He wants to be a CEO type. But if you look at it, Eberflus was everywhere. Eberflus was in the quarterback's room for that meeting. Obviously, he's talking to Caleb in between plays and everything, giving comments on not just, hey, you did this or did that, but really the reads. He's talking about his technique. He's talking about his posture, everything. So again, if you are a good coach, and I'm not going to say in the NFL because some NFL coaches are just there, but if you are a good coach that's not just there and you're actually good, you know both sides. So the idea of offense and defense a lot of times is annoying to me, but we saw Eberflus is there. And everybody knows it. They even said it in here. Caleb is the franchise guy in every sense of the word. It felt a little bit at first like, man, Eberflus is just like almost like Caleb's assistant, but it's not that. He's not his assistant. He's not his QB coach. I saw a lot more through this that Eberflus seems a lot more relaxed, controlled, and again, maybe it's the haircut, maybe it's the beard, I don't know, but he seems to have a lot more of that confidence as a leader. I still, especially early on, I didn't feel like, I felt like I felt the last few years. He doesn't have that head coach DNA. And I know people say the it factor, I can't explain it, but the DNA is a leader. Like I've talked about many times before, people think, oh, you're a good coordinator, you're a good head coach. That's not the same thing at all. And so if you watch these, you would know that by now. As a head coach, you really got to manage personalities. You really got to set the vision. You got to set the atmosphere. You got to do all these things. And it's different now because these players have a lot more access and everything with social media, but you still got to do that as a head coach. I didn't feel like Eberflus did that. I felt like he was a great defensive coordinator that just took the next step up. And I'm not even talking about time management and all that, because that's what people boil it down to. It's not that really. It's how you lead a team. I thought him and Poles were pretty prototypical, and I still believe that. But what I do will admit and recognize is that since the beginning they have evolved and changed, and they've both grew in their confidence. And this, which of course I assume from what I know and what I've seen with Eberflus and Poles, they communicate. Eberflus had to know the plan was to tank, and that's a risky move. So they tanked completely, rebuilt this thing in probably the perfect sequence that anybody has ever hit. And so now of course I'm gonna breathe easy. Like, of course you got to go out this season and prove it, but it worked out. The plan worked out. So I feel like Eberflus and Poles are out there, and they're much more confident group. And so Eberflus still, I don't know, he's the most engaging head coach, but he's definitely given the vibe. And I don't know much about Eberflus. Like, I didn't get nowhere near him. I got around Poles a lot last year, but I didn't get around Eberflus. And so watching this, it made me feel like he's a typical former player. A lot of coaches aren't former players or are not good players, but he's a typical former player, linebacker, old school defense coordinator. He's very old school, typical. And so he approaches it as like he's one of the guys. He's very much like a guy that'll put on the helmet and go out there. Now, his personality's not as big as Dan Campbell, but it's the same type of thing. So I learned more, and I'm willing to see more. I think he's got more confident, but last year my stance was I don't think he has the head coach DNA in terms of just leading the team, but we'll see. On top of that, Kevin, like I said, the Bears are as advertised. Kevin Warren is everywhere. Like, a lot of people say a lot of things, and people talk about Ted Phillips and all that. And I told you, the NFL is 32 different organizations, corporate organizations, and I learned that a lot more. The end of the day, the president typically is not going to impact the team so much. But people were mad because Ted was part of the hiring process, whatever. Obviously, you're the president, you're going to be part of that. And then they took him away from football operations, whatever. I'm not here to have that argument. But as I said, I've learned a lot since then. Each team is vastly different, just like each company is. And so they pitch us this idea that Kevin Warren's kind of out there signing off on everything. He really is. I mean, he's there for, individual contracts. He's there for the draft process. You can compare it immediately to the Giants and their Hard Knocks. Obviously, you got a majority owner who's also the president. It's a little different. It's a very different tone. And he talked, but he really seemed to kind of let people do their job. And I'm not saying Kevin didn't let Ryan Poles do his job, but he's over him. He's shadowing him everything he does. And look, from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's a good symbiotic relationship between all of them. And so they're making decisions, together. And again, they're showing that they are as advertised, because every team says that, but not every team actually functions that way. And it looks like we actually are collaborative. However, just a random thought, again, on less than 1% impact. I don't know that I would love that as Ryan Poles. I know they took a shot and it's your first time as the GM, but I don't love the idea, because I've seen a lot of teams behind the scenes. It ain't a bunch of teams that got their president, like, obviously he's working on the stadium and he's doing all the big level things, but he is really in the grind. Like, this man is in there for meetings. He's there at the preseason games. He's there for contract signings. So Kevin Warren is everywhere, and so is Ryan Poles. So I just thought it was a little weird seeing a GM in there for the rookie, like, talent show type thing. And even me as a coach, I probably wouldn't have the coaches in there. I probably would let them do their thing, but it is Hard Knocks, so I don't know. But Ryan Poles being there threw me off. I ain't saying it's bad. I was just surprised. I was like, oh, okay, the GM's in here. And he's everywhere. He's everywhere. The rain delay, he was there. He's everywhere. And I'm sure there's a lot of teams where the GM is kind of everywhere, but it feels different because I know a lot more about the Bears like we all do. And it just feels like Ryan Poles, I don't know. It just feels, I wouldn't say like Matt Eberflus is under a microscope. I think everybody is. I think it's three people that's like, yo, we gonna crash and burn together. And they're kind of everywhere. All right, so let's get to some of the smaller notes. The John Legend stuff was great. I mean, Caleb, that was weird, and they cut it quick, so I don't know how exactly that went. But bringing that back into talking about his progression and take it slow and all that, I thought that was funny. That was a good bit. The Speedo, obviously, he got hurt, so it's a bad ending. But the Eagle, the Canadian Eagle, whatever they was calling Buddy, I didn't even know who he was. That was wild. That was that's instantly up there in top 10 moments of Hard Knocks. That is definitely Gen Z humor right there. All right, moving on. I covered that. The Simone Biles and Jonathan Owen stuff was cute, man. I don't know them. I don't follow. I mean, I know Biles, but it's whatever. It's whatever. Like, it's not something that I really, dig deep into. But seeing the behind the scenes, obviously, I knew he was going to Paris. That's kind of whatever to me. But to see the behind the scenes with him and Simone, especially, we knew Simone won and what medals she got. But because this was a good season for Hard Knocks, because it's the Olympics, you got a player with an Olympic, not just an Olympic wife, but like one of the biggest. So it was a perfect setup, but I just imagine if we didn't know, like if this aired before her events, I feel like it would have blew up. There would have been so many Bears fans sitting and watching to see if she won and all that. But it was still really good to see him there, to see him back home watching, to see them FaceTime. It was cute. It was cute. And I don't usually get into that stuff, but that was cute. I'm not going to lie. It felt real. It felt authentic. And I'm big into the Olympics. I'm knee deep in it. So it was cute. It was cute. And I'm sure we'll see more of that throughout the training camp. I hit that. Okay, last 2 points. Nick Saban was gold. I thought we were going to get more. It was funny how the D-back room did not even react. They just like, Nick Saban. Or, like, we don't even know who that is. I mean, we don't got no Bama guys, but still, or we used to have Eddie. Eddie's gone. But we don't got no Bama guys, but still. You would think, like, Nick Saban, but, that's part of the reason he left, man. This generation is different. But it was cool, man. I mean, I didn't know that Eberflus played for him, and again, just shows kind of his background. So that was just cool. As a football fan, that was cool. It's stuff that happens. You don't see it a ton on Hard Knocks. And to be honest, it doesn't happen all the time, especially with Nick Saban, because he's never free. But he's free now, so he can do these things. And coaching is about who you know. So he was able to bring him in. Looked like he talked to the QBs, maybe the rookies. Obviously he talked to the DBs. We didn't see what he said. And then he had the conversation with Eberflus, which was fire. It was fire. I mean, as a football coach and an organizational leadership minor back in the day, he was talking my languages. He was talking all my languages. And we could have a master class just on that conversation. But this is what you hear about Nick Saban. This is what you hear about a lot of top, not all of them, but some of the top guys. Like, I've been around Brian Kelly when he was at Notre Dame, I believe that was his name. And man, I mean, and there's other coaches too that are just the MFers, as people say. They are something. And it's not a good feeling as a coach or a player, but they get results, and so they get to do what they want. Then there's guys that are really, you feel like they just love the game. And that's how Nick Saban and Coach K and Joe Paterno are always talked about. And so to hear him talk about all these different things is so true. I mean, I just talked about this with my pitch for Madden franchise. As a coach and even as a player and as a leader, the job is about relationships. And I don't know how to stress this more, because I was like most people, man. Like, I get it. I mean, I coach football, I play football. I get it. It's human beings. But until you really have somebody in the NFL and you really have to go where it's like take your friend to work day and you realize this is really a job. These are just people. And we got social media, we got Hard Knocks, and so it's showing it more, way more than it ever has. But still, I think there's some people that don't realize these are just human beings. And like Coach said, some people just want to be average. They hear this is a job. And I know most of us, we don't make that type of money. We don't play a game, so it don't feel like it, but it's a job to them. So you got, who knows how many players are just here for a check? How many players don't even want to, go on to do anything? How many players don't even care about winning? How many players are dying for a championship? How many players want legacy? You got to bring all them together and make it work. So football is the ultimate team sport, man. Nick Saban was cool. Last thing I'll say, and I'm not pitching this as a negative, but, and of course, it's fine if you don't believe me, but towards the end of this right around when the rookie quarterback got in for the Hall of Fame game, not Caleb, obviously, but whoever the other rookie was, I paused it. And you know what I Googled? I Googled Caleb Williams' siblings. And he's an only child. And I Googled that for a specific reason. I've been around enough young adults. I work in colleges. That's who I'm around a lot. And obviously coaching too, right around that same age. And so I've been around enough young adults to just pick up on certain things. And I could be wrong, but I was watching the way Caleb interacts. And I know people say he's different, he's quirky and all that. And that's fine. Look, if you don't work with young people and from this generation, it'll throw you off. But if you do, this generation is just different. There's certain things that you're like, that's just what this generation does. And so I know they say he's quirky and all these different things, but I'm like, yeah, he's probably different than what society has told us is the typical black guy. But when I watch him interact, I'm like, he's not different as in I don't want to be around y'all or it's business, so like you my coworkers. I was like, he seems like a guy that he really wants to kick it. He really wants to kick it with the guys. He wants to find out what's funny so he can make some people laugh. He wants to say things that people think is cool. He wants to be accepted. Not to say he's not his own man and all that, but I'm like, he really wants to fit in. And I was like, it seems like only childs because they don't grow up with that type of environment. And so lo and behold, I Googled it and he's the only child. And again, I'm not saying as a negative, but it does explain a lot. I never even thought about that, like going into this whole thing. But the way he interacts with people, I think is genuine. But it reminded me of just people who I know are only children, especially at a young age. Like you 45, you've been an only child, you kind of in your ways. You 22, 23, 21, you learning how to navigate life, in group settings when you didn't grow up in group settings. So that was interesting to me, but it does say a lot about Caleb. So I'll watch that going forward. But overall, those are my thoughts, man. Hard Knocks, we're here. It was weird because we just watched that game and to see it and on like documentary style already, that was kind of weird. So we're going to see it in almost real time. So it'll be interesting to watch. So go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. What stood out to you? Share around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay up and bear down.